Computer. Welcome, everybody, to Boston 9/11 Truth. Today is February 25th. Oh, excuse me, February
No.
5th, February 5th, 2026. And today our speaker is Barbara Honegger. Many of you are already familiar with her, but I will, get to her bio and introduction shortly. I just want to cover a few housekeeping rules that everybody, the speakers and participants, are to use polite decorum and a speaking level of voice and stay on topic and not attack one another. So that's basically it in a nutshell, but you all received the full guidelines in the email invitation. And just quickly, our disclaimer, the views and opinions expressed by our speaker and our participants, and even myself, do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of Boston 9/11 Truth. So, we are a varied group, a nonpartisan group, and, various opinions. We all just agree that the government lied to us about 9/11. Boston 9/11 Truth endeavors to motivate activists for 9/11 Truth, and educate the public. So in that vein, no further ado, let me introduce our special guests. Um, Barbara Honegger is board chair of the Lawyers Committee for 9/11 Inquiry. Um, she has served in a number of high-level positions in the federal government, including a White House Policy Analyst, Special Assistant to the President for Domestic Policy, Director of the Attorney General's Law Review at the Justice Department, and for more than a decade was a senior military affairs journalist at the Naval Postgraduate School, the premier science, technology, and national security affairs graduate research, um, a University of the Department of Defense. She is the author of the book October Surprise, consequently validated by formally classified documents that led to a congressional investigation of the Iran side of the Iran-Contra scandal, funded at the level of the 9/11 Commission, and has been an investigative researcher, author, public speaker, and major activist on the events of September 11th from the day. Well, Barbara,
Hi.
you wanted to make some comments before we start the presentation.
Yeah, well, first off, I appreciate the invitation. Um, I think most everybody, if they got the emails, know that I'm here because of Sybil Edmonds, right?
Yeah.
Sybil Edmonds was scheduled to speak, and she decided that when she learned that Mr. Rosini of the FBI had been a previous speaker, and she said he's a disinformationist. She canceled pretty much at the last minute. And so my dear friend Sue Serpa, with whom I recently had lunch here, close to my house in California, because one of her two daughters lives up the road from me. That's a wonderful coincidence. Um, so Sue called me up in a panic. Not exactly, but she wanted to know if I would be willing to pinch hit. And I thought it would be a wonderful opportunity. So I'm I believe that the title that I asked Sue to send everybody by email was something to the order of what I would have said, or some of what I would have said, because there's a time limit here. But what I would have said if the DC conference Pentagon Day had been a real debate, because it was, in my opinion, really terribly um, organized or misconceived, put it that way. Um, but we won't go into that. I'm going to be disclosing some things that I would have disclosed there had there been more time. And quite frankly, um, if those of us on all sides, there was David Chandler and Wayne Costi and myself, Craig McKee, and Xander Arena. I hope I haven't forgotten anybody. There was also Niels Harrit, who came all the way from Copenhagen on the Pentagon Day, and none of us knew what the others were going to say in their presentations, which I think was terribly misconceived. All of us should have had a lot of time to know what the others were saying, or that part of the program shouldn't have happened, in my opinion. But anyway, we're going to try to repair that today. So that's number one. Thank you, Sybil Edmonds. Uh, Number two is I'd like to let everybody know that I'm really glad to be here, especially because of all of the 9/11 truth groups in the country. I feel most at home in Boston 9/11 Truth, in part because of my soul sister Sue Serpa, but also because of the people involved. When I came to Boston and Connecticut for a speaking tour, and my God, that's many years ago now, and that was a lot of fun. Um, I just felt right at home. Jane Milliken put me up, and I'm very grateful for that. In fact, I think Jane's done that at least twice. So I just feel right at home with the Boston 9/11 Truth Group, and I'm appreciative of the invitation.
Well,
And
thank you,
the last thing
Barbara.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry, what?
thank you, Barbara. And you're right up on our website with that famous Boston Tea Party event.
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
Which was my vision, by the way, and it was a
yes.
magnificent success, both of them, especially the first one. It was wonderful,
Oh, yeah.
absolutely wonderful. Yeah, the videos, I've got the videos of that as well. And the last thing I wanted to say before we go to the slides is about Hamuk. And I hope I'm pronouncing Hamuk's name correctly. I used to say Hamux, and he corrected me. Um,
It's
but many
Hamuk.
people,
Hamuk.
Hamuk, like,
Yeah.
ooh,
Ook.
okay, okay, Hamuk. Well, that I believe is a Native American name that he was even given, that he was either given or gave himself. And many people don't know, but there's another wonderful coincidence, and that is for Hamuk would have to tell us probably after the presentation, if he's still around, I hope, um, why he was living, or at least spending a lot of time, in a Native American chief's cave in Carmel Valley, just up the road from my house. Just up the road from my house. And as I was preparing to do this today, I woke up one morning and I was laughing when I woke up. I guess it was in my dream or something. But I was laughing because I remembered shortly after the 9/11 truth movement got going, Hamuk was a leader, still is. And especially with all of his videography and activism. And there was a very denigrating newspaper article about Hamuk, about the conspiracy theorists and how weird we all allegedly are. And Hamuk was got real top billing in that article because they had found out that he lived or spent a lot of time in a Native American chief's cave. I believe it's the Esalen Indians, but Hamuk could correct me if I'm wrong about that, but certainly a chief of a Native American tribe right here in Carmel Valley, California, on the Monterey Peninsula of California. And I woke up laughing because I thought to myself, well, isn't that rich? Um, we have the government that's claiming that a man on dialysis in a cave in Afghanistan was able to defeat the entire NORAD and all of US intelligence and military and White House. Um, and they think that that's perfectly fine. That's not a conspiracy theory, but that they have a problem with one of our leading 9/11 truth activists and researchers and videographers for living in a cave. So thank you, Hamok, for everything you've done. Okay, so I think somebody just came in. Maybe we should wait a moment. But I just wanted to especially thank Hamok for everything that he has done and
You're
will do
here.
for the 9/11 Truth Movement. Okay, so whenever you want to start, we can go to the first slide, Sue.
All right.
And I will say next slide when we're ready to go to the next one.
All right.
Okay? All right, I'm going to go into presentation mode here. I think is what I need. Yes.
Can
Uh,
everyone see the screen okay?
can
Yeah,
can anyone not see the screen? Nope.
I see it
Good.
fine. Yeah.
Everybody's
Great.
fine? Okay. You'd have to, if you can't see the screen, please go on off mute and let us know before I start. Okay. Well, hearing none then. Okay. So I just want to remind everybody, I know that this is being recorded, and I know that some of what I'm about to include in the slides, you already know. But because it's being recorded for posterity or prosperity or whichever, I'm going to include some of the information, the general overview information to begin. So let's just review very quickly the government's official story. And this is the official story that is advocated by David Chandler and Wayne Coste and a number of other people in this particular subset of Pentagon research. And what is that official story? That the Pentagon attack is just like the World Trade Center attack's official story, that it was what I call a unitary event. And what do I mean by that? A unitary event means that it was really one thing from beginning to end and nothing else. It was just a plain impact, more than one at the World Trade Center, but at the Pentagon, like at the World Trade Center, just a plain impact per building, some fires, resultant fires from the impact, and exploding jet fuel, and a subsequent collapse, in the case of New York City, of the entire buildings, in the case of the Pentagon, above and around the part of the alleged impact of Flight 77, 757, Boeing jetliner. Okay, so just as a plane impact with some fires and collapses, excuse me, so also one initial explosion, no more, no pre-placed explosives whatsoever in the picture, and that the same plane that left the airport later arrived at the building. No swap planes. Okay, we can go to the next slide. Okay, so this is just to remind people of what the aerial view, what the Pentagon looks like. That cloverleaf uh, will become extremely important. And the reason it is extremely important in proving that the official story at the Pentagon that is advocated by Chandler, Coste, and others is false, provably false, is in great part because of this cloverleaf. Why is that? Because the official story is very clear that the alleged plane, Flight 77, went directly, almost exactly through the center of that clover leaf at an angle going towards column 14 on the west wall of the Pentagon. But as you will see, the most important and most reliable and most credible witnesses all agree, as I will prove to you. They all agree that the actual approach of a plane, which I will show you was not Flight 77 and why, that it had been swapped before The official story says the plane turned around and came back east. It actually crashed or was reported crashed, and there was a police report from the crash about the crashed plane, the local police report. Um, but the actual flight path into the Pentagon was to the north of the cloverleaf, which would be to the left in the photograph that you're seeing. Okay, we can go to the next slide. All right, this is just another aerial photograph of the Pentagon, and it's important because I want you to clearly see where the helipad is, and it's that, of course, square concrete structure on the lawn off of the west side of the Pentagon, and just a little bit north is to the left, south is to the right. A little bit to the left, it's the heliport firehouse, and that little building on top was the heliport firehouse controllers lookout. And on 9/11, that was Sean Boger, and he's a very important witness. We will get to his testimony in a little bit. Okay, we can go to the next slide. The next slide just is a good graphic. It's a really clear graphic. You can see the heliport there, and what they labeled the security building. I suppose it had some security aspect to it as well, but that's actually the heliport firehouse. And you can see it's kind of hard to see, but there's a little tiny fire truck, a little red fire truck parked just outside the roll-up door of the heliport firehouse. And on top is again, the heliport air traffic controller's lookout, who was Sean Boger on 9/11. And very, very important, the red dot is where the official story, Chandler Costy and others in the movement, Pentagon researchers in the movement, who support the official story about the Pentagon, they claim that Flight 77 hit where that red dot is. Okay, we can go to the next slide. And then I think this is I believe this is the last slide that is a kind of an overview slide about the geography of the area and the layout. And that is just to remind people that there are 5 rings of the Pentagon. And the official story claims that Flight 77 coming in, hitting where the red dot was and going in at a diagonal angle through 3 rings of the Pentagon from all the way into the wedge 2. So the vertical line there in the middle of those 5 rings on the bottom side, that is the boundary between wedge 1 on the right, which had just had the renovation to be upgraded, and wedge 2 on the left, where April Gallup's desk was, amongst others, in the Army area. Okay, so that's very important slide. So let's go to the next one. Okay, so we're going to get into the main areas of contention, and I'm going to address each one. And I'm going to be revealing some new information in this presentation that I wasn't able to in the Pentagon day of the DC conference last September. That was on September 12th of last year. So main areas of contention was the plane, a 757 Boeing airliner. Was it even Flight 77? And the reason I say was the plane, a 757 or Flight 77, is because there's not a single witness who has come forward. No public witness, no publicly known witness has reported 2 low approaching planes approaching the Pentagon at all. Another area of contention, was there a wall impact? Another area of contention, wall impact or not, was a plane actually destroyed at the Pentagon? Many researchers, including the Citizens Investigation Team, Xander Arena, and Craig McKee, believe that a plane was not destroyed at the Pentagon. I do. And I'm going to support that again, as I did in the DC conference here. Another area of contention was the final approach path, the government's official story south path, or was it a north path? I'm about to to clarify who takes which positions in the Pentagon Day of the DC conference here in a moment. So I won't do that here. Another area of contention, are the official FDR and radar data to be trusted at all? And just a reminder that it's based upon the FDR and the official FDR and radar data. It's in great part, very important part, the official South Path claim versus the North Path claim is based on those. So those are very important differences. Okay, we can go to the next slide. Now, I do have some video clips, and this is one of them. And this video clip, let me just remind myself. Oh yes, this video clip, of course, that's David Chandler, and this is a short clip from his presentation in the third Pentagon Day at the DC conference, and it will speak for itself. So I'm going to ask you to play that. Now, in order to get to the button to hopefully play the video, what you have to do is click on the screen part. And then I see you've done that. And then you can, and make sure the volume is turned up. And let's listen to that. It's not long. I'm not hearing the volume or the audio.
Let's try it again.
9/11 events, the central question that divides the 9/11 truth movement is whether or not the Pentagon was hit by American Airlines Flight 77 flying from Dulles Airport with passengers on board. If it was not hit by a plane or if it was not hit by that flight, it hardly matters what alternative mechanism caused the damage. Passengers got on that flight at Dulles. What happened to them? If we assert that AA-77 did not hit the Pentagon, then the story becomes much darker than it already is. Did passenger DNA end up in the Pentagon or not? Yes, it did.
Okay. So we can now go to, well, actually, I'll comment on that slide. David Chandler and Wayne Coste and their group places a tremendous emphasis on the claim that DNA evidence from actual Flight 77 passengers was physically found in the Pentagon. And in my behind the smoke curtain and before this presentation, I asked Sue to forward an email to you, which she did. So if you haven't seen it, please do. I give you the link to my documentaries, my main documentaries on 9/11. The first one is Behind the Smoke Curtain, what really happened at the Pentagon on 9/11 and what didn't and why it matters. And I can't get into it here because I had to keep my slides to, a relative minimum compared to Behind the Smoke Curtain, which is 2.5 hours. But in Behind the Smoke Curtain, you will see the definitive evidence that the DNA from alleged Flight 77 passengers was not found inside the Pentagon. And even on this, I don't know how large you can see this on your screens. It's pretty small on mine right now. But this is a graphic from the Pentagon Building Performance Report, which is a official or quasi-official report of the government. And this shows where the government alleges they found the Pentagon personnel bodies and body parts, and separately where they claim that they found Flight 77 passengers and alleged hijacker body parts. And if you will notice at the very top, if we can go back to that, maybe, well, it's
Oh,
gone off the
sorry.
screen, but that's
I was
all right.
trying to enlarge the screen and I
Yeah,
went back to the beginning of the video.
that's okay. You don't need to go back. But for those who watch the video later, when you bring up that graphic, you will see that the government claims that, there it is, that the government claims, see up at the top, beyond the top of the rectangle, the government claims that the vast majority of alleged plane passenger bodies is actually outside the alleged C-ring exit hole. And behind the smoke curtain proves definitively that it was not an exit hole of anything. In fact, both Xander Arena and myself have proven, myself in smoke curtain and Xander at his presentation at the DC conference in the Pentagon Day, we have both proven that the so-called exit hole of a plane on the inside of the third of firing fin of the Pentagon was made by a shaped charge explosive placed upon the wall. He calls it ordnance. It was in fact a shaped charge explosive, and we have that statement from one of the world's foremost experts on shaped charge explosives. So this claim by Chandler that that the allegation that DNA from passenger bodies was found inside the Pentagon is one of his two, he claims it's one of his two most important pieces of evidence, which is not correct, that he claims proves that the plane at the Pentagon was Flight 77, in fact, not even some other plane. Okay, so we can now go to the next slide. Okay, so throughout the next few slides, based upon not only what I already know and what these members of the 9/11 Truth Movement research community have already published over many years, but in particular, what they also were very explicitly claiming at the recent DC Turning the Tide Pentagon Day of the Pentagon Conference. I'm now going to go over what the different presenters at that Pentagon Day at the recent conference in DC, the positions that we take relative to one another on the major areas of contention. So here we go. So was the plane A757 or even Flight 77? Okay, I say no to both. No to both. Costley and Chandler say yes to both. Now, Craig McKee at the end, feel free to correct me, but this is my honest understanding of your position on this, that Craig McKee does support everything basically that the Citizens Investigation Team, also known as CIT for short, CIT, that Craig McKee takes the position of CIT, which is yes to both. In other words, was the plane a 757? Was it Flight 77? Everything that I understand is that they assume it was, in fact, the official story, Flight 77, that made it all the way to the Pentagon, but that it flew over. And Xander Arena takes the same position. He says no to a 757. He gave his digital analysis evidence at the Pentagon conference in his presentation that the famous frame 23 of the famous 5 frames of the outside security camera videos at the Pentagon, when you analyze that carefully, it shows that assuming you're looking at an actual plane and it hasn't been photoshopped, that's a big assumption. However, assuming it's an actual plane you're seeing in frame 23, and assuming it's on the official story alleged impact point path, then it is too small in this digital image to be a 757. It would have to be a smaller plane. And Xander Arena is, however, open to it not being Flight 77, and as I am. And how is that? That is because in his presentation at the DC conference, Xander did state at one point that there could have been a swap. And in fact, he puts great emphasis on Operations Northwoods, as I do, for being just a kind of common modus operandi of the military industrial part of our government to do swaps, to do plane swaps, and how they do it between the CIA and the military. Okay, so now we can go to the next slide. All right, this slide is just to remind you, and this is approximate. I want to be really clear, this is approximate. because it's not only myself, but other 9/11 researchers use this slide to show the relative size of a Boeing 757-200, which is what the official story claims the plane at the Pentagon was, to show its relative size to the entire west side of the Pentagon. So you've got the Pentagon height is only about 70 feet, and the fuselage length of 757-200 is 156 feet, the wingspan 125 feet. This is an immense aircraft. This particular graphic also does not make particularly clear that the official story claims, as do Chandler and Coste and others in their group, claim that the plane came in at an oblique angle, not perpendicular to the wall. But this is a approximation of the relative sizes. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. So, amongst the presenters at the DC conference, what were our relative positions, comparative positions on was there a wall impact? I say no. Chandler and Coste say yes, and precisely where and as the government says. Greg McKee says no, that there was a flyover, I presume. However, he used to be clear orally in his presentations that he would say no, there was no impact, but then he stopped talking about the other part of SIT, which is their claim or their interpretation or theory that the plane flew over. Okay, Xander Arena also basically takes the position of SIT. He says no, there was no plane, no wall impact, and that it flew over. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. So there's a difference amongst us. Okay, so wall impact or not, which is what we just saw, was a plane destroyed at the Pentagon. This is where I'm very different from Greg McKee and Xander Arena. I'm not that different from Chandler and Coste. We both say, yes, a plane was destroyed. It's just they say it was Flight 77, exactly where the government says and exactly the time the government says. And I say, yes, there was a plane destroyed, but it was not Flight 77, which I will give the evidence for in this presentation, as I did at the DC conference. Yes, there was a plane destroyed there. No, it was not Flight 77. It was not destroyed, whether it hit the wall or not, anywhere close to the official story, alleged impact point, but approximately 120 to 150 feet further left or north along the wall at and beyond and around the helipad. And the helipad, again, is that structure very close to the heliport firehouse. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay, this is another area of contention, disagreement. Was the final approach path the official Chandler-Coste south path or a north path? I say north. Craig McKee says north. Xander Arena says north. Citizens Investigation Team says north. Chandler-Coste alone says south, and their group says south official story path. Okay, let's go to the next slide, if we could. This is the other area of contention in how we break down in our comparisons. Are the official FDR and radar data to be trusted at all, on which the official South Pass is in significant part based? I say no. Chandler Coste say yes, of course, because they support the official story. Craig McKee says no. Xander Arena says no. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay, another area of difference was the plane Flight 77, which was, and I have this in parentheses, of course, that was a 757-200. And again, just a reminder, why do I say the plane and not planes? There were other planes at and around the Pentagon, including a military attack helicopter, which I go into in great detail proving that. And the official radar record also shows it in Behind the Smoke Curtain, my documentary on the Pentagon attacks. However, no witness, just a reminder that no witness reported two low approaching planes at the Pentagon. So there are a lot of other planes, but there's no witness saw anything more than a single low approaching plane and then a fireball. No witness whatsoever. Okay, so my position, based upon the evidence, that Flight 77 descended and crashed before the turn back east. In fact, there is a local police report where they went to the crash site. And Kristen Breitweiser, the lead of the Jersey Girls, pointed that out and said that she felt it was extremely important, this police report, in her interview with Tucker Carlson around this past 9/11 anniversary. So my position was the plane Flight 77 is no. Chandler and Costi and their group, yes, it was Flight 77 all the way from Dulles to the Pentagon. Craig McKee and Sept, now Craig can correct me if I'm wrong about his position versus Sept, but my understanding is that both either claim or assume that the plane that they say flew over the building and didn't hit or crash anywhere, whether it was on the helipad or at the official story alleged impact point in Wedge 1. My understanding very clearly is that they assume or claim that Flight 77 was the same plane from Dulles to the area of the Pentagon, but it flew over. And the same thing with Xander Arena. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So I'm now going to go to the substantive evidence. And some of this I gave at the DC conference. Much more than this is in Behind the Smoke Curtain, but there is some new evidence that I'm presenting and new rebuttals that I'm presenting in this presentation. Okay, so evidence that the plane at the Pentagon could not have been Flight 77. Okay, next slide. Okay, American Airlines actually put out a press release a few days after 9/11, shortly after the FBI and the Pentagon claimed that they had allegedly found a flight data recorder, an FDR, and a cockpit voice recorder, a CVR, just inside the alleged C-ring exit hole, which it is not a plane exit hole at all, on the inside of the third ring of 5 rings into the Pentagon. So shortly after the FBI and the Pentagon came out with a photograph that you'll see in a moment of the CVR and the FDR that they say they found inside the Pentagon, American Airlines took a look at the information. They watched the presentation by none other than then FBI Director Mueller himself, and they immediately put out a press release. And in this press release, they stated explicitly that based on the CVR that was allegedly found inside the Pentagon, that the plane at the Pentagon could not have been not only Flight 77, but any American Airlines aircraft that was in the air flying on 9/11. Okay, can we get the next slide, please? Okay, this is a photograph that FBI Director Mueller, and in the NTSB report that he was reporting on to the public in a press conference. This is a photograph in the NTSB report, and it was NTSB who analyzed the two alleged Flight 77 so-called black boxes. This is one of them. The government claims that this was the Flight 77 cockpit voice recorder, and that it was so destroyed and burned that there was zero recoverable data on it. Now that's very strange. And that's very strange because they claim that they didn't have any problem getting data off of the flight data recorder that they claim was found very close to it. And the reason that they would have been found close to each other, or the claim would have been that they were found close to each other just inside the C-ring alleged exit hole, is because these black boxes, these two so-called black boxes, are actually very close to one another in the tail section of a plane, because that's the most survivable part of a plane, and you want to be able to recover these black boxes, of course. It's also very strange that the cockpit voice recorder would not have any retrievable data on it, because these black boxes are designed to survive precisely such crashes and the temperatures. They are designed to survive far higher temperatures than any plane crash known to humankind. Okay, so anyway, this is the photograph that they claim is of the cockpit voice recorder. Well, the American Airlines press release made it very clear it's the wrong kind. It's the wrong kind for Flight 77 or any American Airlines plane flying on 9/11. So let's go to the next slide. Okay, so the NTSB report about the CVR states and shows that it was a magnetic tape model. However, the American Airlines press release stated that Flight 77 and all of the rest of their Boeing aircraft that were flying on 9/11, and all of their Boeing aircraft now have the modern solid state types of CVRs that are far more resistant to damage, including the heat from fire, than the older magnetic tape recorders. Okay, so even more evidence that those black boxes could not, including the FDR, that's very important, the flight data recorder, also couldn't have therefore been from Flight 77 if the CVR found right next to it wasn't. Okay, let's go to the next slide. And as I just said, and because the flight data recorder and the CVR are both in the tail of the same plane, the FDR allegedly found near this wrong kind of cockpit voice recorder also simply cannot physically be from Flight 77 or any American Airlines flying on 9/11. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Now this is, again, we're going forward now answering the question, could the plane at the Pentagon, whatever it was, have been Flight 77? I say no. Xander says no. Okay, so in Xander's presentation at the DC conference this past September, he his analysis, his digital analysis, he showed that the claimed plane, that is by the official story, and Chandler and Costi and their group, shown in the outside security camera video in particular frame 23, the famous frame, is too small for a 757. And again, as I mentioned before, that's assuming it was an image of an actual plane and not photoshopped, and assuming that it was on the official South Path. Then Xander showed by his digital analysis that it could not have been as large as a 757 and therefore couldn't have been Flight 77. Okay, let's go to the next slide. All right, I'm going to go pretty fast past this one because I don't really support this particular claim, but it could be true. Because until the movement is able to obtain the still withheld dispositive definitive videos, which are still being held over 24 years after the event, we will not know exactly what the plane looked like that was at the Pentagon. This witness, however, gave very, very explicit, detailed description of what he claims to have seen and that it was a global hawk. Now, I know that there are people in the movement who have discredited this or attempted to in the past, but this is very, very detailed testimony. So let's move to the next slide. And of course, the reason I have that is a global hawk is not Flight 77. Okay, next slide. So evidence that the plane at the Pentagon was not the plane that left Dulles Airport. Now, this is part of what I presented at the DC conference, and it's in even greater detail in my documentary, Behind the Smoke Curtain. So let's go to the next slide. Okay, so on 9/11, and this is an official report that I give you the link and the page numbers at the bottom. On 9/11, Indianapolis civilian FAA air traffic control were watching live on radar and saw and officially reported that the plane that had left Dulles Airport, yes, it was Flight 77. I stipulate that. We all do, I believe. That Flight 77 was seen by the radar blips to begin to descend, and quite precipitously, at least 6,000 feet observed at 8:54 and 43 seconds while it was still flying westward. towards California, and while its transponder was still on. So they were watching the transponder blip, not a primary radar blip. All right. This time of 8:54 and 43 seconds, when the plane was seen to descend and it was later reported crashed to the Air Force search and rescue, 8:54 and 43 seconds is well before the official radar has the plane flying back eastward. That has never descended until it was already well past the turn flying back eastward. In other words, that's pretty strong evidence that a plane was substituted for Flight 77, which was reported by FAA Indianapolis Air Traffic Control to the Air Force Search and Rescue that it crashed. And as I mentioned, there is a local police report, and it crashed close to either the Tennessee-Ohio border or the Tennessee-Kentucky border. I can't remember which one, but anyway, they're right close to one another there, where the turn was, and the official story turn of the plane. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. All right. The next slide is simply a book that I think everyone should try to purchase. This book is by a man from the Netherlands, an analyst from the Netherlands, who is an expert in this. And he has analyzed all of the radar. And he has shown in this book for all four planes how he claims they were swapped, precisely how he claims they did it. Okay, let's go to the next slide. And by the way, you can order the book at that link on the previous slide. I give you the link to order the book. There is an English language edition. Okay, and this is simply in behind this. See, yeah, you can. Could you play that? There's a short clip there. And let's get the audio.
The in-flight swapping of commercial airliners with military drones since the 1960s. One such plan was called Operation Northwoods, and it detailed how to replace a civil airliner with a military drone in midair, unbeknownst to the air traffic controllers. After the swap, the airliner would be landed in a military base. The drone would continue to fly, appearing on radar as the original plane, and would be remotely guided all the way into the target.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so I've marshaled some of the evidence there. There's a lot more in Behind the Smoke Curtain, my documentary on 9/11 at the Pentagon, about the Pentagon. And you do have the link that Sue Serpa sent you before this presentation to watch the entire Behind the Smoke Curtain documentary that goes into a lot more detail, proving that, or the evidence compellingly supporting that the plane at the Pentagon could not have been Flight 77, that it was swapped. Okay, so next slide. So we're moving on to another area of contention and getting into the substantive evidence. Was there a wall impact by a 757 at column 14 in wedge 1, which is the official story alleged impact point? And the official story also claims that this huge 757 was going at approximately 530 miles an hour with almost all of its fuel still in the plane. The fuel in the center fuselage tank is the first to be used, but it had only done a very short piece of what was going to be a transcontinental flight to Los Angeles. And so both of the wing tanks in the left and right wings of the planes were completely full of jet fuel. So only Chandler and Coste say yes, that there was a wall impact at precisely where the government says at column 14 in wedge 1. Okay, let's go to the next slide. All right, now this slide is the central photo in the entire debate, both at the recent DC Pentagon conference and in general. It is the central, most important photograph in the entire debate over the question of what is the width of the first floor opening. And you can see that is kind of dark at the bottom. And this is where the US government military and intelligence, Pentagon, Chandler and Coste claim that the very center of the nose of a huge 757 going at 530 at least miles per hour hit the wall. Okay, so let's go to the next slide, which is a bit more detailed about that. All right, so now we're going to get into the real differences between myself and Craig McKee, and I presume the Citizens Investigation Team, although they haven't addressed it directly, but Craig has, and Xander Arena, the other three of us besides Chandler and Coste at the recent DC conference. Okay, so the red circle is precisely where it's a diameter of approximately 12.5 feet, which is the fuselage diameter of a 757-200. The red circle is precisely where the Pentagon Building Performance Report itself says that Flight 77, with that very width of the fuselage, impacted on 9/11 at the Pentagon, going at 530 miles per hour. However, there's still a little bit of smoke, but right in the center of the red circle, you can see it at the upper part of the red circle in the center, vertically in the
I'm
center.
sorry, Barbara, am I on the correct slide? I don't see a red circle.
Oh, I'm sorry, you go to the one before.
Oh, I'm sorry. I must have missed one. Sorry about that.
No, no problem, no problem. This is the
Okay.
one I'm talking about, yeah. We haven't missed much here. Okay, so the red circle is where the government and Chandler and Coste and their group claim that a Flight 77, a huge 757, fully loaded almost with jet fuel, entirely in both of its wings full, impacted going at least 530 miles per hour, right at that red circle. That is the diameter to 12.5 feet of a Boeing 757. However, as I was about to say before we switch back to the slide, you can see in the upper part vertically of the red circle, you can still see that column 14 is still present. On the second floor, people are wrong to call it a hole. There are simply two windows without window panes, two empty windows on either side of that vertical, still present column 14 on the second floor, which, according to the official Pentagon Building Performance Report, was hit by at least half of the fuselage. Okay, so from that alone, it's not possible that Flight 77 hit there. But the contention between myself and Jander Arena and Craig McKee comes in even more about the first floor. So if you look at the first floor, you will see that there is a lot of black. But if you look very carefully, you will see that the continuous opening on the first floor, which would have to take a huge Boeing 757 whose wingspan is 125 feet. It would have to fit into a continuous opening of at most 60 feet, which is less than half of that and closer to 50 feet. However, Chandler and Coste take a look at the precise same physical evidence in this photograph, and they say, no, the opening is actually about double that. It's 90 to 100 feet. And the reason they do that, despite the fact that you can see with your own eyes, that there are still present columns on the left and the right of the continuous 50 to 60 feet opening. Yeah, they're a little bit damaged, but they're there. And they have to claim they have to claim that the damaged area by a plane on the ground floor, on the first floor, has to be that width, or their entire argument falls apart. And that's the reason they do it. But it's self-evidently not true. Okay, let's go to the next slide if we could. This is the one that Sue had up a minute ago. This is just a similar type of demonstration. This is a 757 coming by the official story at an angled down with the left wing down. And the fuselage is over that where you saw the red circle in the previous slide. And you will see that this huge, massive, multi-ton engine is over. If you look inside the right smaller circle, you will see that it's directly in front of, if you believe Chandler Coste in the official story, it's right in front of one of these columns. It's damaged, yeah, some, but it's still there. Again, the official story in Chandler Coste cannot be correct. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So, difference amongst the Pentagon researchers at the DC conference. Wall impact or not, was a plane actually destroyed at the Pentagon? Wherever. I say yes, that it was at, by, and beyond the helipads. No question about it, as you will see. Chandler and Coste, they say yes, but where the government says in column 14, which we just proved can't be the case. Craig McKee and Sept and Xander Arena and Sept say no. Okay. So, of course, Craig McKee, Xander Arena, and the Citizens Investigation Team, their interpretation, and I think misinterpretation of the witnesses, we'll get to that a little bit later in this presentation, they say no. A plane was not destroyed at the Pentagon, that it just flew over the building. Okay, let's go to the next slide. However, the physical evidence clearly shows, as you will see, that the vast majority of real plane wreckage was from a real plane that crashed and exploded around the helipad. That is approximately 150 feet further to the left or north along the wall than the official story alleged impact point at column 14 in wedge 1. That the plane was reduced to extremely small confetti-like pieces that witnesses referred to, that they looked like millions of pieces of confetti, and that this was at, around, and beyond the helipad in the direction towards the wall. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Now, this is the damage right off the helipad firehouse. The helipad firehouse, you can see the fire truck. That was Alan Wallace's fire truck. He's a critical witness that we will get to a little bit later. And just beyond the heliport fire truck, you can see the roof of the heliport firehouse, where Sean Boger was the air traffic controller. And you can see this massive devastation there. There was massive fireball devastation there. No question about it. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay, can we go back to that last slide? I just want to say that when we get to witness Alan Wallace, who was literally standing on the far side of that very red fire truck, that was his fire truck, between the fire truck and the heliport firehouse, he was standing right at the right front of it, like kind of by the tire, when he witnessed all of this happening, or he saw a plane coming towards him, and we'll get to his specific detailed testimony in a little bit. The plane was coming at an oblique angle, but from the north, not from the south, and to the north of the highway cloverleaf, not through the middle of the highway cloverleaf. He's very, very clear that the plane came in to the north of the cloverleaf, and that he saw it, he estimated, when it was only about, I think he said 100 yards or so from, he first saw it when he said it was about, he thought, well, we'll have to see his testimony in a later slide, either 200 feet or 200 yards away from the building, and that it was coming down low very fast towards him. And when he saw this, he immediately ran for his life and threw his body under a van that, luckily for his sake, was parked right outside of the front of the firehouse. And he did survive. He was severely burned, but he survived. Okay, now we can go to the next slide. Okay, so this is just more Pentagon plane wreckage just beyond the helipad on the direction going towards the wall. You can see the wall there in the distance. And we'll go to the next slide. These are just some slides about these massive quantities of confetti-like wreckage all over and around and on and beyond and either on all sides of the helipad. Okay, we can go to the next slide. There were large pieces. This is one of the famous ones. obviously mocked up to look like it was Flight 77. Next slide. This is an important slide. There's another large piece that's being picked up by an FBI agent. And what you see in the background is the helipad firehouse. That is the helipad firehouse. And I think it's very important for people to know that the FBI and the other plainclothes personnel, and we'll go to the next slide now. The next slide. Nope, nope, I think you went beyond. You need to, yeah, there we go. Yeah. So these are FBI personnel who've taken off their jackets and or plainclothes personnel. They could be Secret Service. But I see that slide's formatting is a little bit off. But in any case, you see the photograph. They were explicitly instructed only to pick up the larger pieces of wreckage, something that they could identify as wreckage around the helipad. They were not so instructed to do so off the official story alleged impact point, and we'll see why here in a moment. Okay, we'll go to the next slide. Okay, so all of this evidence, in my informed opinion, definitively rebuts the citizens' investigation claims that there wasn't enough wreckage, or some of them claim no wreckage, that wasn't pre-planted, even though there's not a single witness to any noticeable piece of wreckage being planted before a plane crash. So this is definitive evidence that rebuts its claims that there wasn't enough wreckage or any wreckage, so that the crash scene had to be completely staged by the pre-planting of plane wreckage off the wall. And of course, that the plane flew away. It would have been physically impossible in any case to plant all those millions of extremely small confetti-like pieces, let alone the large ones of all different sizes. And again, no witness claims to have seen any pre-planting before the attack. So I just think that claim is false. Okay. Now this is the famous early photo off of the alleged, in the area, not immediately by the wall, but off of the alleged column 14 alleged Flight 77 impact point. And so if we can go to the next slide, and we're going really fast through these slides now, that's good. Let's see, I might have missed. Well, I just forgot to put, if we could go back one slide. Okay, I forgot to put in one slide I meant to, that's in my DC presentation and in Behind the Smoke Curtain, my documentary. And that is a slide that clearly shows it's looking from, with your back to the heliport firehouse, by the heliport firehouse, looking in the direction of what you're seeing here from north to south. And you see all of this wreckage until you get to the lawn in this area. And which is obviously the reason that the FBI and other plainclothes and some plainclothes personnel were specifically ordered just to pick up noticeable plane debris off and around the helipad. Okay, now we can go to the next slide. Got a next slide? Yeah. So what about all these photos you see of plane parts inside the building? Yeah, there are some photos of them. However, this is very important. Key Pentagon witness April Gallup has gone public in a public radio show stating to Bill Deagle that before she left on pregnancy and childbirth leave, which was about 3 months before 9/11, her office was just into Wedge 2, over that center line, to the north of Wedge 2. She wasn't even in Wedge 1. And before she left for pregnancy and childbirth leave, she went into Wedge 1, and to her surprise, there were plane parts on the floor of the Pentagon inside Wedge 1, which is the very part of the Pentagon where you see photographs of alleged Flight 77 plane parts on the inside after the attack. Okay, I'm not going to play this because it's a little bit long, but if you, when you get my PowerPoint slides, not the ones you've gotten by email, but this set, which I'm going to ask Sue to send to everybody as well on the Boston 9/11 Truth List, it will have these inserted video clips and audio clips, including this audio clip. So listen to it for yourself. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay, this is, again, areas of difference. Was the final approach path the official Chandler-Coste south path or a north path? I say a north path, Chandler-Coste south official path, McKee and Arena north path. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay, now the reason that I put this one here as well, even though it was originally given as a different or separate area of contention, is because they're so related. Are the official FDR and radar data to be trusted at all, on which, in great part, the official South Path claim is based? I say no. Chandler and Coste and their group say yes. Greg McKee, Xander Arena say no. All right, let's go to the next slide. Okay, I hope you're able to enlarge this slide on your screens because it's extremely important. It's a compilation that I have put together for my DC presentation, but in addition to this, to the aerial photograph in my DC presentation, in my video, which you also have, that Sue sent you the link to, I have added the text, many of the text overlays that weren't on the original. Okay, and I've also put in the green line that you see moving from the Sheraton Hotel. This is critically important. Notice where the green line begins over the right-hand or south roof of the Sheraton Hotel. We're going to get to those critical witnesses in a moment. It then goes almost straight to where Ed Paik was, who was a sit witness. Then it curves slightly and goes over, basically over, the north front window of just over the roof of Hemphill's, witness Hemphill's Navy Annex window. It then continues to curve upwards and over the Arlington Cemetery workers. We will see their testimony and how important seeing the plane, the actual plane, not the official story plane, that the actual plane comes in over the Sheraton, very low, and then goes over the Navy Annex, very low over the roof also, and then comes very close to the Arlington Cemetery workers, numerous of them who saw it come over the Sheraton low and come over the Navy Annex low before it got to them. And then it curves and it ends not at the official story impact point, but right next to the heliport firehouse. Okay, so that green line is very important. I have added it to a slide that the Citizens Investigation team and Craig Ranke and others use. I've added that green line because you're going to see the evidence for that green line here in a moment. The FDR path, the official story Coste Chandler path, is the blue line with the arrow to it. The Citgo gas station is noted with another arrow. And those orange lines that are kind of between the FDR path and above even the green line, which is where some of the Arlington cemetery workers saw the plane coming in. Those are slightly different, but all further north than the official FDR path, north path witnesses, all of those orange lines, okay? That's very important. All right, so now let's go to the next slide, and we're going to be coming back to that slide. Okay, now this is important for you to know, and Sue, all you need to do is do the first little short clip up until, because we're going to play this full clip a little bit later. Just play this clip at the very beginning through when David Chandler, this is his presentation at the DC conference, where he says that he uses the words under the radar. You can stop it there. So if we can.
Radar got his
Oops.
Sorry, I'll start over.
Okay.
The radar got as far as the Sheraton Hotel, but no farther because by then the plane was too low. is literally flying under the radar, as they say.
Okay, that's enough for there. All right, so go back to the previous slide for a moment, if you would. Yeah, so there's the Sheraton Hotel. Now notice how further to, I guess you would be the northwest, right? Of the yellow line that becomes the blue FDR path line. The yellow line is the official story radar line coming in, and the blue line is the FDR path. Now, this FDR path line, the blue line, is a bit deceptive. And the reason for that is the blue line should extend all the way down. Forgive the words click to add title. I didn't know how to get rid of those on the slide. But that blue line should extend all the way down to off of the red arrow that says Sheraton Hotel. That is where the radar ended, because that is where the plane got under 100 feet. And 100 feet was the lowest that the closest radar, which was at Reagan National Airport, could see. And it still can't see below 100 feet. So from that point on, all anybody has in the 9/11 truth movement to go on are witness testimonies, and they are conflicting. You have to use your judgment, and you have to see where the most witnesses who are the most credible in your judgment line up and agree. But all you have after the Sheraton Hotel are witnesses and the alleged FDR data. Okay, that's very important. Okay, now we can go to the slide after next. Yeah, that one. Okay, now I'm going to play this briefly. This is a very short clip, again by David Chandler speaking. And this is the slide that he put on the screen in his presentation at the DC conference, which he said, and it's based upon the research of Frank Legg, or Leggy, who is no longer alive, unfortunately. But Frank Legg analyzed the FDR data. And Frank Legg, this slide is based upon Frank Legg's data, and it may even have been from Frank Legg to David Chandler, but David Chandler put this on the screen. And about this slide and this data, in any case that the slide represents, Chandler said at the DC conference that this was the data, this was the evidence that, quote, brought him around, unquote, to, quote, realizing, unquote, that the official story approach path was true, which it is not. Okay, so if we can just hear this this brief audio with the audio turned on.
It's not playing.
Not playing?
Yeah.
Okay. That's interesting.
The radar.
It plays when I click.
Wait a minute. It
Wait.
was late. I'll
Oh.
try it again.
Okay. You know, I think you need to click on that little bar under. Click on that first. Yeah.
Okay, got
Now
it.
play.
Radar path indicated as here by color-coded symbols. The flight data recorder path indicated by the yellow line. The exterior damage path from the overpass to the Pentagon indicated by the short red lines. And the interior damage path and the C-ring exit hole were all in perfect alignment. When Frank showed me this diagram of those features, that's what got me off the fence about whether a plane actually hit the Pentagon.
Okay, I think that's it. All right, please leave that on the screen for just a moment. Unfortunately, that sound bar, whatever it is, video sound bar, is over, of course, what I wanted to show you. But if you look right above the what's now on the screen, the little horizontal blue bar on that video sound bar, right above that, you will see a little tiny red square. Okay, if that video bar weren't obstructing it, what you would see is that the radar at that very point is no longer on the official story path. It is verging off. It is verging off the official story path. Okay, and even though I don't get into it in these slides, but Xander Arena does in detail in his Pentagon presentation last September, the RAIDS 84 data, which is official military radar data, does not agree with the official story flight path. Okay, so let's now go to the next slide if we could. So these are North Path witness testimonies, and we're going to get into these, and we're going to go through them very quickly because they all are the same. The Sheraton Hotel witnesses, these are critical witnesses, one of whom I have personally interviewed. She blew my mind. These are Sheraton Hotel workers and a woman by the name of Deb Anloff, who was staying in the hotel on 9/11. Navy Annex witnesses, Albert Hemphill and Mr. Moran. Gas station, the Citgo gas station witnesses, Lagasse and Brooks. The many agreeing Arlington Cemetery witnesses, the I-27 witnesses, Danner and Ryfield. I won't be able to get into Ryfield, but she's very, very important. The Heliport Firehouse witnesses, Wallace and Boger, extremely important. Okay, now let's move on to the next slide. We're going to quickly get into the critical Sheraton Hotel witnesses. Why is the Sheraton Hotel so important? Because that's where the actual plane approach veered off of the official story alleged radar path into the alleged FDR path. Because the radar ends right off of the Sheraton Hotel. Okay, so the roof camera was on top of the roof. There were other cameras, but that's the camera that the lawyers committee is going to do everything we can to get the full video from. I interviewed a ballroom witness in the window where the lower red arrow points to. At the Pentagon DC conference back in, I believe it was 2014, where I was the only speaker who was invited to speak twice and did. After the event was over, I decided I wanted to rest before coming back to California. And so I stayed in the hotel, in the Sheraton Hotel. The conference was held in the Sheraton Hotel. Okay. And we looked directly out on the Pentagon, and at that point, the Navy Annex was still there. It was a wonderful conference. It went on for 2 or 3 days. It was a wonderful conference. And afterwards, the next day, I went to the Pentagon Memorial, and then I went back to my room at dusk. And as I was walking down the hall on the 4th floor, and I got to off of my room, there was the cleaning lady's cart, and she was in my room. And so I, knocked on the door so I wouldn't startle her. And I introduced myself, and we had a pleasant, short conversation. And my guidance said, ask her if she was here on 9/11. And I did, and she said yes. And I said, did you see anything? And she said yes, and she looked really, really scared. And I said, it's okay, you can tell me. I was just at this conference upstairs, and we're trying to tell the world the truth about what happened. And she said, then I will tell you. And so she locked the door and left her cart, and she said, follow me. We took the elevator up to the top floor. And the top floor has the ballroom. And she took me to the ballroom plate glass window where the arrow is pointing. And she explained to me that on the morning of 9/11, she and 2 other of her co-female workers in the support staff were setting the table in the banquet room, which is where that is, in the banquet room for a large banquet, when suddenly there was a horrible noise, a screeching noise. And right after they heard the screeching noise, suddenly the building shook so hard they were afraid that it was going to fall down. Now, that might be an exaggeration, but they were that afraid it would fall down. And she said, right after that, right after the shaking, which of course was from the downwash of the plane, that many witnesses saw come over that very corner of the building, very low. She said right after the horrible shaking, and it was still screeching, that she said this huge plane just, quote, filled my entire window, off the window, of course, and veered down and curved around, and then there was a big fireball. She got very, very emotional. And she said, it was horrible, and she started crying. So when I had that experience, I went back with new eyes to look at the citizens investigation team's witnesses. And I can tell you that the one thing I agree with Costa and Chandler about is that, yes, of course, they weren't professional interviewers. They didn't have all the proper procedures, but that doesn't necessarily refute the truth of what they videotaped as the witnesses. And when I went and looked at the Pentagon, which is the video that the Citizens Investigation did, that Costa and Chandler, in particular Chandler, specifically cites in his presentation and plays lots of clips from, some of which, very brief clips you're about to see, I realized, yes, this is true. The actual plane that came in veered off of the official story, straight path to the official story alleged impact point, right before the Sheraton Hotel, when you lose the radar and all you have is witness testimonies and the fake FDR that couldn't have been from Flight 77, and we've already proved that earlier in this presentation. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Here are these Sheraton Hotel witnesses. This is extremely important, and I should let you know there aren't that many more slides. Okay, the Sheraton Hotel witnesses, these are dispositive video witnesses, dispositive witnesses. And what do I mean by dispositive? In the lawyers' committee and in the legal world, dispositive evidence is evidence that in and of itself stands alone proving the case in court of either the plaintiff or the defendant. This is dispositive evidence against the official story. Okay, as I've already mentioned about, and I know her name, I know how to contact her, and I know the names of the other two female Pentagon witnesses who all saw the same thing. She told me, Barbara, we all saw the same thing and felt the same thing. You've already seen that. Now we're going to get to this critical confirming witness, Deb Onloff, who was watching the burning World Trade Center on TV in the hotel somewhere besides her room when she decided to go to her 14th floor room. That's very high up, not far below the ballroom. She went to her 14th floor room in the Sheraton Hotel in another part of the building when, right after getting into the room, she heard this loud roar and looked out the window, which faced in the direction of the west side of the Pentagon. She said, this is a quote, "Suddenly I saw this plane right outside my window," as if it were right outside of her window. Of course, it had flown a little bit, but it had that sense that it was right outside the window. Onloff said during a telephone interview from her hotel room, quote, "You felt like you could literally reach out and touch it. It was that close. It was just incredible to see. It was then, just then, that this huge fireball happened from a crash into the wall." Now, that was from her perspective, wasn't it? Because her perspective, like those of the Pentagon, of the Sheraton Hotel workers, was at a literal vertical angle to the wall. So they would have seen a fireball and assumed that it had crashed into the wall, as opposed to, from my interpretation, that it had in fact crashed at and around the helipad. Okay. And then she said, when it hit, that is when the fireball happened, and she had assumed it hit from her perpendicular perspective. The whole hotel shook. Why is that important? That's incredibly important because this was a literal explosion. It wasn't just a detonation, which Chandler claimed in his presentation at the Pentagon conference, a detonation, the so-called fireball from jet fuel. It was an actual massive explosion with a massive pressure wave that the pressure came all the way that distance back, beyond the Navy Annex, beyond that to the Sheraton Hotel, and shook the building. And the next witness that you're going to see, which is Albert Hemphill, who was at the north front corner at the top floor window looking out, he described right after the fireball, he described a massive pressure wave coming back to the Navy Annex, which is, of course, the same one that hit back at the Sheraton Hotel shortly thereafter. He said that it had the power, that pressure wave had the power of a 2,000-pound bomb. And he said, and I know about bombs. I have experience with bombs. So they used exactly the same language. The woman at the Sheraton Hotel ballroom, Deb Anloff, it was as if it was just outside my window, like I could touch it. Okay, let's go to the next slide. All right, the Navy Annex witness, Albert Hemphill, very important. Okay, I'm just reminding you where Hemphill is. You can see it's a little bit, the text is a little bit cut off, but where it says HEM, the PHILL is kind of blurred, but you can see that his office was on the top floor of the Navy Annex, which is no longer there, but it was then, of course, the top floor on the far northwest corner, looking out towards the Pentagon. Okay. All right, so let's go to the next slide. Okay, so this critical witness, Albert Hemphill, very important witness. He personally ID'd, there was a C-130 aircraft flying overhead. He personally ID'd it because he was very familiar with aircraft. He personally ID'd it as an EC-130 electronic warfare aircraft that are modified for drone remote control, for remote controlling drones, and for jamming radar. Well, you wouldn't have to jam radar once it got to the Sheraton Hotel anyway, the vicinity of the Sheraton Hotel. And he also identified the plane, just as Xander Arena does, as smaller than a 757, but not too much, a 737, but appreciably smaller. And this is specifically stated in the book, which I cannot more highly recommend, called 9/11 Coup Against America, the Pentagon Analysis, by retired United States Air Force engineering officer and crash analysis expert Peter Tierradera. Another Pentagon witness, Bowles, testified that the C-130 that was flying above the Pentagon and a little bit behind the plane that flew down to the Pentagon, it was as if it was guiding it towards the building. All right. Now remember that the plane was swapped, and I had meant to say earlier that the Flight 77 was swapped before it could get to a turn back east. It was swapped for another plane, and that plane was a remote controlled drone, mocked up to look like what ended up at the Pentagon. Okay. So the Citgo gas station witnesses Lagasse and Brooks, everybody knows about them. But many people don't know this. Of all of the official Pentagon testimonies that were taken by the Department of Defense itself, oral testimonies on the record, all of them are available online except for two. Two Pentagon policemen. Lagasse and Brooks were Pentagon policemen. I believe that's those two. Okay, next slide. This is just to remind you where Lagasse and Brooks were. They were very, very, very close they were actually at the Citgo gas station, and you can see that there. Almost everybody knows where it is, but maybe somebody on the Zoom doesn't know. So we've gone from the Sheraton Hotel over the Navy Annex and Hemphill, and now we are at the vicinity of the Citgo gas station, where multiple north of official FDR path witnesses place the path a little bit different, but the important point is they're all to the north of the official story alleged FDR path. Okay, so let's go to the next. Now you're going to hear, this is extremely important, a very short clip by Lagasse, who is one of those two, I believe, those two Citgo gas station witnesses whose testimonies I believe the Pentagon has still classified, along with that of Brooks. Okay, if we can start that, and in order to get to the video, you need to click. No, you need to go back.
I
Yeah,
don't
okay.
see any play button.
Well, go to the next slide. The next slide. Next slide. The next one. There. Okay. There you go.
But these were the light poles. This is where the taxi cab was. Right here. Not over here. Nothing happened over here. Period.
Okay.
Okay.
But
Now stop. If you could stop it for a moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Now what's important about that? What's critically important, in fact, could you go back to the beginning, because I need to see that photo of Lagasse back at the beginning of this slide.
But
okay, if you'd stop it there.
This is where the, but
yeah, if you could just stop it. Yeah. Okay. So what he's doing there, he's got his pen over to the north, over off of the actual impact point of the actual plane. And then in a moment in this video, you've already seen it, he then moves his pen over to the right and puts a kind of makes it go in a circle, and he says, nothing happened here. Everything happened on the left where his pen is now. He moves it to the right, which is, to the south, to the official story alleged impact point area. And he says very definitively, nothing happened here, period. Okay, now you can go forward. Keep going forward again. You can
this is where the taxi cab was. Right here. Not over here. Nothing happened over here. Period.
Keep playing?
Yeah, you can keep playing now.
Okay. What he's pointing out is where he thinks the light poles were. He's getting the light poles in the wrong place.
Okay, that's good. So you can leave that on the screen. I would say that even though Lagasse is responding right here to the question of where was Lloyd England's taxi cab, that it was way to the north on I-27, not where the photograph of the taxi cab that you see publicly is with a long pole. He's being very clear that the taxi cab was actually hit by part of a light pole way over to the north. Okay? Which aligns with all of these witnesses. Okay. And what you're also seeing here with David Chandler, because David Chandler and Coste and their group assumes, talk about confirmation bias. They assume that the official story path is true. They tell you that they don't, but they, in fact, at least unconsciously do. Because he's saying here, well, that can't be real testimony. He must be mistaken. Because that's not where the light poles were down. That's not where the 5 light poles were. No, but a plane coming in where it actually came in, its left wing hit a light pole. And Albert Hemphill says he saw the flash when it did. And that's precisely why the plane's left wing, where the plane went down and the plane's left wing hit around the helipad, and that's where the fireball came from. Okay, we can go to the next slide. We're getting close to the end here. Okay, I have to scroll up myself. All right. All right, confirming Lagathi's original north location for loading Glenn's taxicab, Chandler, as you're about to see, actually admits that that taxicab, when it was hit by part of a light pole further to the north, was originally, and he says so, you're about to hear it, 160 feet further to the north of where the public photo of the taxi is that you can see today. Therefore, the taxi either moved or was moved to the south about 160 feet to align with the official story south path in the extant photo. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay, this again, you have to click on the slide itself for the little arrow to come up to play the short video clip.
Whatever hit the taxi to make him put on the brakes was 160 feet further up the road.
Okay, you got it. And when you actually watch the testimony, Chandler's testimony at the DC conference, you will see the context to before and after it, but I'm trying to keep these clips short because of time. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Very important. Guess what, folks? 150 to 160 feet just happens coincidentally to be the distance between the alleged official story impact point of Flight 77, which it wasn't, at the lower red arrow, and the actual impact point at the upper red arrow. That's not a coincidence. It is not a coincidence. And how do we know, or how do we believe, that the actual impact point was where the red arrow is? What's interesting about this photograph is that it's a very rare photograph. It was taken not long before 9/11, but if you notice, there are two firehouses, not just one. The one where the red arrow is was the old firehouse. That part of this reconstruction and renovation project had just been demolished. And you can see that the new one, which doesn't yet have the Schonberger's air traffic control lookout station with big plate glass windows above it on the roof, that is not completely built yet. And both Schonberger and William Milton, probably the most important Arlington Cemetery witness we're about to get to, both of them explicitly stated, including Schonberger, the air traffic controller there at the helipad, they both explicitly state that the place where the fireball happened was precisely at the location of what had just been the old heliport firehouse at that upper red arrow. Okay, let's go to the next. Okay, now this is just really, this is shocking. I have to tell you that I'm not going to give you my opinion about this. I want you, which you will, form your own opinions. But Chandler and Coste actually claim that there is something called data drift. And that when they, quote, compensated or, quote, adjusted, unquote, for the data drift, that they were able to align the incoming plane with the official story south path. But that before they did so, it was the north path. You will now hear this for yourself. Okay, this is a video, and again, you have to click.
The radar got as far as the Sheraton Hotel, but no farther because by then the plane was too low. It was literally flying under the radar, as they say. Okay. The FDR, apart from the little offset, which is maybe 100 yards or so, I can't remember exactly how much it was, but it was, that's the drift from the data. And you just accommodate for that amount of drift by just lining it up with the hole as Frank Lake did. Or if you do the more detailed analysis that I did, It basically lines up perfectly with the radar.
Okay. Now I should say that he misspoke. He's intentionally not telling you, I believe. You can't know what's in somebody's head. No, you can't. But from what he has left out here, which is so critical to destroying their position, he's explicitly left out. He's saying, well, I can't remember exactly how much this compensation was that enabled us to move the approach path from a north path to a south path. He says 100 yards, which of course it can't be 100 yards. What he probably meant to say, even though he then said he wasn't even sure that was correct, I'm sure he meant to say 100 feet. In fact, it's 150 to 160 feet. The precise same distance that we've just revealed is the distance between the official story alleged impact point, which is of course the terminus of their doctored, I believe doctored, approach path using so-called FDR data that can't be from an FDR from any American Airlines plane flying on 9/11, including Flight 77. Okay, so that's extremely important for people to understand this. And I would like to also add that the Coste Chandler and group, that Pentagon research group held a conference some years ago in Denver, Colorado, put on by the Denver 9/11 Truth Group, where Chandler lives and is a member of. They put on a conference that would not allow any speakers except for their interpretation of data, or I would say misinterpretation of data. I tried, they refused. I got an email back saying that they would allow me to put one question on a card and give it to Fran Shure, who is married to David Chandler. And they would not allow anyone but their group to speak. And afterwards, we went to their home, David Chandler and Fran Shure's home. Beautiful, beautiful home in the outskirts, of Denver. And it was a beautiful, beautiful day. Almost everybody was at early dinner. Almost everyone was outside on tables. But myself and Bonnie Faulkner of KPFA Radio at the time, very famous for her Guns and Butter program on KPFA Radio out of California, out of Berkeley, California. She was to my left. To my left was Wayne Coste at the dining room table indoors. I was at the end of the table. Wayne Coste was to my left. Bonnie Faulkner was to his left on the left side of the table. To my right was kind of in a pincer effect on my right with David Chandler, and to his right was Warren Stutt, who had been a speaker. He's a digital analyst and video analyst, and he'd been a speaker at the conference. And it was at that dinner table where they were putting Coste on my left and Chandler on my right, were doing everything they could with Coste's screen open and my screen open to that famous photograph that I showed you at the beginning with a red circle, which is the most important physical evidence we really have, proving that Flight 77 or no large plane could have possibly hit it, column 14, on parts of the first and second floors. We had that open on our screens, Coste and myself. And they were putting pressure on me from both sides. Coste on my left, Chandler on my right, to try to get me to say that I was wrong. Of course, I didn't, and I wouldn't. And shortly after that, Warren Stutt, who I believe is an honest person, Warren Stutt said something about data drift. And my ears perked up, and I didn't understand what he meant. And I also had probably been looking at my screen. And so I looked up from my screen and said, Warren, could you repeat that, please? And he said, well, we got the official story line on the FDR after we adjusted for data drift. And I said, what do you mean? And he explained to me that before the so-called adjustment for data drift, that the line had been a north path line, not a south path line. That's when I first learned about it. And for all of these years since, I've been telling Craig McKee about this. Okay, let's go to the next slide. We're almost done. It's important from the point of view of the difference between me and Craig McKee and Xander Arena and the Citizens Investigation Team. To the extent that Craig McKee and Xander support all or part of what the Citizens Investigation Team claims beyond that the real approach path was a north of FDR path, official story FDR path, which I totally agree with. The evidence is overwhelming and compelling and dispositive that it was a north path, not a south path. However, I completely disagree that a plane flew over. I've given you the evidence for that already. And all that is needed for the SIT people, advocates, and myself to agree about what happened at the Pentagon, we agree with the North Path. All they have to do is realize that they have to give up the assumption that whatever plane they were thinking about was on a North Path, went over the building, over the official story alleged impact point, about 150 feet further to the south. But in fact, and at its terminus was in fact about 150 feet further north, which is far more in keeping with the rest of everything that they have demonstrated. All right, so I believe that once they do that, it's 100% against the Chandler-Costa interpretation. Okay, the heliport firefighter, Alan Wallace. Now we're getting right up to the wall. This is his official testimony, and he has actually published it in a Navy publication. He says, only about 200 feet from where he was, and I had wondered before if I misremembered it could have been 200 yards. No, it's 200 feet. Only about 200 feet from where he was. And he was standing, as I mentioned before, just at the front right of the red fire truck, just outside of the heliport firehouse, where you saw all of that burning devastation from the fireball. Okay, only about 200 feet from where he was, standing right there by the fire truck, just outside the heliport firehouse, he looked out, and this is what he saw. He was very clear it was a white plane, that it had two horizontal stripes. From his point of view, it was coming in at an oblique angle towards him. He was very clear it was to the north of the cloverleaf, which is not possible for the FDR path, the alleged FDR path. The alleged FDR path takes it right through the center of the cloverleaf, much further to the south. He was very clear it was a white plane with two horizontal stripes. From his vantage point, it was going very fast. He thought that they were orange and blue, or red and blue, or orange, red, and blue. And that at the point that it was 200 feet away, it was already only about 25 feet, to his estimation, off the ground. It was very low, and it was flying very fast towards him. He saw it only a split second before he and his fellow heliport firefighter, Mark, that should be Skipper with a K, by the way, not Slipper. They raced away from the locations where they were and were able to save their lives just before there was a huge fireball. And Wallace, in his public pronouncements, including in a Navy publication article, he emphasizes that he did not see the plane crash. He was already under the van outside the heliport firehouse, which saved his life. Okay, next slide. I'm reminding you about what it looked like when he came out, immediately after he came out of from under the van, just a little bit further off of the left of this photograph. And this is what he saw, and he was quite severely burned. But he was a hero, and he tried to restart his fire truck, and he couldn't. Okay, next slide. Alan Wallace initially thought, he's gone public with this, that the white plane, he saw it as a white plane, that its left wing tip, he thought, had maybe hit the back of his fire truck. That after the left wing tip hit the top of a single light pole, not multiple light poles, but a single light pole. Why a single light pole and not two? Because the width, the wing diameter, the wing width of that plane being smaller than a 757 would only hit, if it did hit one, it would only hit one pole and not two, which is the, of course, official story claim that Chandler and Costi support during on the 5 light pole path, about 150 feet further down, further to the south. Okay, so Alan Wallace initially thought that the left wingtip of the plane that almost killed him, um, uh, he thought that it had actually hit the back of his fire truck, that it was coming that directly to where he was standing before he was able to run away in time and throw his body under the van outside of the firehouse. Okay. Also, corroborating Wallace. There couldn't be a better witness than Wallace anywhere, better than Sean Boger. And we're going to end here with Sean Boger, who was the heliport firehouse air traffic controller. The reason that Wallace is a stronger witness even than Sean Boger himself is because Sean Boger's testimony is very clear that when he saw this plane was coming straight towards he and Alan Wallace and Mark Skipper, that Boger, flattened himself on the floor as if that was going to save his life, but in fact it apparently did. Okay, so Wallace is a more important witness even than Boger, but Boger does confirm him. There are multiple witnesses also who were not directly at the helipad area, but who were close enough to see what happened. And they all say that the left wing of the plane either hit the ground at the helipad or close to the helipad before the fireball happened. Okay. Okay, let's go to the next slide. The Arlington Cemetery witnesses. Now, the reason that I went to the helipad first is because they are the terminal point, and I had just told you about the compensating by Chandler and Coste and Frank Legg for so-called data drift to, I believe, fix the allegation or fix evidence for the alleged FDR flight path. Okay, so now we're going to go to testimonies by just a few very short testimonies by the cemetery witnesses who were the witnesses between Hemphill at the Navy Annex and Sean Boger and Alan Wallace at the helipad. Okay, the heliport firehouse and the helipad. Okay, so if we could play that, and again, you have to click on the image of the screen to get to the audio, to get to the video.
Military came between what's that, the Navy Annex, it was not a drop.
I think that might not have been from the beginning.
I don't feel he came between what's that, the Navy Annex, it was not a drop.
That's all we got.
Okay, well, that's my mistake. I'll just tell you what a little bit before that, and I will correct that, Sue, and insert it instead so that you'll have the right one to send everybody in the final PowerPoint here of this presentation today. But just before that, William Middleton says that it had come directly over the Navy Annex towards him. Okay, we can go to the next one. It's a little bit garbled there. Okay, now I believe that Sean Boger's is just, this is his drawing that he made on an aerial photograph of the Pentagon and the Pentagon area to the Citizens Investigation Team. And you will see how clearly, just like Sean Boger and just like Alan Wallace, he's very clear that the plane came in to the north, just to the north of the Cloverleaf, where the false so-called FDR approach path comes directly through the middle of the Cloverleaf, further to the south. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay, this is a very short clip from cemetery worker Daryl Stafford. And again, you have to click on the
corner. You can see the building in the background, which is the Sheraton Right. There, it looked like it came over that, and then it looked like it was just over top of the Naval Annex on the right corner of it. It was on the Navy Annex. It was flat. It was just like it was on top of the roof, landing on the roof. And just like it barely made it over the roof. And then when it got beyond that point and we started to scatter, it started to bank to the right.
Okay. So I believe that you probably heard him say that he first saw it come over the Sheraton, meaning the roof of the Sheraton, we know. And then it went to the Navy Annex, and it was so low to the Navy Annex, it looked like it was just over the roof, just like the two witnesses had said for the Sheraton Hotel prior to that. Okay, let's go to, we've only got 3 more slides. The next slide. Okay, so let's see, do we have? Yeah, 3 more slides. Okay, so this is the challenge. So we have conflicting witnesses. There are witnesses for the so-called FDR path. Yes, they are. But they are government witnesses, they are Pentagon witnesses, and about 5 or 6 of them are lined up along I-25, I-27, Washington Boulevard, all from USA Today, the newspaper, every one. Okay, so I do not trust those witnesses. I believe that they were pre-planted witnesses and that their job was to support the official story. And we know that, and by the way, this is, I believe that's in Craig's video of his presentation at the DC conference. If I'm remembering correctly, it was Craig's. It was one of the presentations at the DC Pentagon conference that a number of the witnesses from USA Today changed their stories later to better align with the official story FDR path from the Sheraton to the wall. Okay. So the challenge we have is that there are conflicting witnesses. If we are correct, myself, Craig McKee, Citizens Investigation Teams, Xander Arena, and literally hundreds of others, if not more, do not believe that the flight data record path is the real path, that the real path is the one that I've shown you in this presentation. We have to realize that we're talking about, at least at a minimum, a false flag. I don't believe that it was a staged event in the sense that most people think of the word staged, that it was faked or a hoax. No, it wasn't. There was a real plane. I can't get into it here, but I go into it in detail in my documentary, Behind the Smoke Curtain, that you have the link up from the email from Sue. That what really happened at the Pentagon on 9/11 was that the plane there was a drone, it was remote controlled, and it was part of an exercise. There was actually an exercise at the Pentagon, just like an exercise at the World Trade Center on 9/11, excuse me, by NORAD on 9/11, on what would happen if a plane impacted, a hijacked plane impacted the World Trade Center tower. NORAD was doing an exercise on that on the morning of 9/11, which was the pretext or the reason that they gave afterwards that they were confused and didn't scramble the fighter jets to respond in time, which of course was just a cover story. The same thing was true at the Pentagon. There was an exercise at the Pentagon on the morning of 9/11 on how the building would respond in case there was an attack, both an inside attack and an outside attack by a plane. Okay, I have interviewed witnesses to that effect, and I'm going to be updating my Behind the Smoke Curtain, including those witnesses I've personally interviewed. Okay, so the witness descriptions are also all over the map. There are witnesses on the ground who said they saw a large plane, a small computer plane. It was white. No, it was the livery, or it looked like Flight 77. It looked like a Boeing 757 by American Airlines. It was a 757. It was 737. No, it was much smaller than that. It was a missile. It was a missile with wings. It was a missile without wings. You have to use your judgment, and you have to spend an awfully lot of time sifting the evidence, which is what myself and other serious Pentagon witnesses have done. And we have all, with the exception of the Chandler Coste group, come to the same conclusion. All right. I believe this is the final slide. Where next? Where next is the next slide, and then the last slide. Okay, so the challenge is there's conflicting evidence and witnesses, but those conflicting evidence and witnesses were designed into the pre-planned cover-up story of the 9/11 operation from the beginning. So what's the solution? The absolute solution is that we, the movement, must get the government, and by that I mean the Pentagon, the FBI, the National Archives, any other relevant agency, we must get the government to release all evidence, video and otherwise, showing what actually happened at the Pentagon on 9/11, including everywhere else on 9/11, and including all the still withheld videos, and there are many, but especially beginning with a video from the Sheraton Hotel. So thank you for your attention, and I really look forward to your questions.
Well, thank you, Barbara. That was quite comprehensive. And so I'm sure we have some Q&A. So raise your electronic hand. We'll call you in order. And I have been instructed to limit the questions to 2 minutes and the responses to 2 minutes, if at all possible. All right. So let's see. I think we have Mike first. Go ahead, Mike.
Okay, I got it unmuted. Thank you, Barb. That was very interesting. I want to address, first of all, the witnesses. They're certainly scattered. Their testimony is all over the place. So that's clearly unreliable source of evidence. But I do want to address your point when you give the written slides about the evidence. And I'm going to quote, physical evidence clearly shows vast majority of real wreckage was from a real plane crash explosion, reduced to extremely small confetti-like pieces. One witness said it looked like millions of these pieces were around the helipad towards the wall.
Correct. These are witness testimonies.
Yeah, and then number 2 slide, you state evidence definitely rebuts CIT claims that there wasn't enough wreckage. It would be impossible to plant millions of these extremely small confetti-like pieces. And that's where I want to challenge your conclusion. There's a machine, it's an industrial shredder. They put entire cars and trucks inside these machines, and they spit out pieces that look identical to your photograph on the ground. So it would be very easy, to follow in the footprint of Operation Northwood to plant evidence. It would be also very easy on the Pentagon to have a pre-planted box filled with confetti-like fuselage wreckage that was detonated and could even have included some jet fuel to burn the grass in the ground to simulate an explosive occurrence. So it would not be difficult at all to duplicate or simulate an explosion with confetti-like pieces. That is not natural for an explosion of a plane to reduce the plane into confetti. That is a manufactured process. That is not a natural ordnance occurrence. I agree with you on everything else. I definitely don't believe a jetliner landed inside the Pentagon, but let's assume what you're saying is accurate, that a plane was exploded in and around the helipad. Where is the landing gear? Where are the titanium engines, which are virtually indestructible?
I think you've got 2 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
So,
I yield.
Okay. Well,
Thank you,
thank you,
Michael.
Mike. Thank
Yeah.
you. I really appreciate all the questions. I really do. You can imagine I've thought about this very carefully. First off, I've marshaled a tremendous amount of compelling evidence that a plane actually was destroyed there. So let's begin with that. I begin with that. Second, it is not the case that all of the debris is confetti-like pieces. There are lots of little pieces, but there are a lot of pieces of all different sizes. And I think you're maybe not remembering that there's not a single witness to pre-placement of explosives. Not a single one. I think you're also assuming
There wouldn't
that,
have to be.
just a moment. No, I'm speaking. I think you're also assuming that whatever plane it was pretty close to the size of a really big 757. I don't.
I
That's my
never said that.
No, but I think you're assuming that
No,
because
no, I'm not. No, I'm not.
well,
Not at all.
I think maybe unconsciously you are.
Okay, next we have, let's see, how do I remove
Well,
it?
I did want to respond to her response just briefly, if I may,
Oh,
quickly.
all right.
The fact that no witnesses saw pre-planting of evidence is really irrelevant. Like I said, there could have been a container planted, staged, that was detonated. It had a charge inside of it. At the appropriate time, it was detonated and it exploded and it threw the pieces everywhere. That would be a very typical and simple staging of a simulated explosion. So I yield. Thank
Okay,
you.
well, that's true. It's very hypothetical, and the burden of proof would be on you. I do point out that Xander Arena, in his presentation at the DC conference, did acknowledge that at least in the video from the two outside security camera videos, that there is no evidence of a flyover.
But you didn't explain the lack of landing gear or engines. Those are virtually indestructible. Where are they?
Well, we don't know exactly what kind of drone it was, do we?
They have engines.
Yeah, they have an engine, and
Yeah.
there was an engine found there. You can see the piece of it. Just go to my behind the smoke curtain, and also you can go to I believe it was David Chandler's presentation.
A piece of an engine would be easy to put inside of a box, detonated to explode and
Okay,
throw it.
well,
Yeah.
I think you're really stretching
No,
to
that's
try to.
Operation Northwood. That's
No,
Operation Northwood.
No, you're going beyond
let's
Northwoods.
not have a
You're,
debate on the Q&A,
yeah,
because
you're stretching beyond citizens investigation team's claims.
okay.
Thank you.
Next we have Chris Bergier. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to share a screen here. I want to share an aerial view of the Pentagon, Barbara.
Oh, good.
Can you guys see it?
I can see it. Yeah.
Okay. So my question to you, Barbara. So looking at the aerial view, the rooftops. It's not only on the face of the Pentagon where the plane allegedly is supposed to impact, but if you look at the lines going through all the rings, where my mouse cursor, do you see my mouse cursor?
That's the A and B corridors. Yes.
Right. So those rooftops are singed. They look like they're all burnt.
Yes,
And
they are.
do you have any theories of what caused that,
Oh
Barbara?
my God, do I?
Oh, okay.
I haven't even gotten into the other critical part. If there are two parts to my documentary Behind the Smoke Curtain, which by the way has been out there for over 11 years,
Yep.
you have the link to it. When you watch it, you will see that there are two fundamental points. One, there was a real plane destroyed at the Pentagon near the helipad, not at the time or at the place on the wall, or by the wall where the official story says, number one. And number two, that there were many instances of pre-placed explosives that went off inside the building.
Oh, okay. Well, let me just. I think this really looks like a directed energy weapon laser being singeing the tops of the roof right
No,
here.
that's not what it's from. No.
Oh, you're
Um,
sure? Oh,
yeah,
okay.
I'm positive of that. You can read about that, I believe, in the Pentagon Building Performance Report. The roof material, um, I guess it was some kind of insulation or something like that. It was very flammable, as it turns out. And the fires spread. They spread especially along those corridors, which are open compared
Huh.
to
So you're saying you're saying that these are just roof fires that spread. Uh,
yes, correct,
not. Huh.
correct.
Okay. Well, it looks kind of like the, California wildfire where like a
Well,
laser came down and just singed the roofs. But if you
yeah,
say they spread, oh, okay. I'll
yeah,
have to look.
we know it's spread, and we have dozens and dozens of testimonies. If you watch behind the smoke curtain, you will see the actual testimonies.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Can you
Yep.
stop share screen, Chris?
Sure.
Thank
There
you.
you go. Yep.
Thank you. All right. Next we have Craig.
Oh, good, Craig. I was looking forward to this one.
Go ahead, Craig. You're
Oops, you're on
muted.
mute. You're on mute.
How's that? Okay.
Yeah,
Sorry
good.
about that. Yeah, there's more than I would, I'd love to get into a lot of stuff with you, but I'll do the best I can in the 2 minutes. A
Then we
couple
can
of
we can do more later.
yeah, sure. Is that okay, I see. I'm just seeing this white thing on the screen? Okay.
No, I see you.
Okay, I guess it was just me. A couple of clarifications just quickly
Yes.
when you were stating my position from in the early part of your slides around 14. Just to clarify something, well, more correct something. I never have taken the position that it was a 757 or that it was Flight 77.
Okay.
I certainly am inclined to accept that it was a large plane. It could have been it didn't necessarily have to be a 757, and I don't believe it was Flight 77. So I just
Okay,
want to
thank you for
clarify
that
that.
clarification. I will correct that.
Okay, very good. And the other thing was you mentioned about me not talking about flyover. I just want to be clear on that too, because first of all, I've never really made a big deal of the flyover. Although if somebody asked me directly, where did the plane go? I mean, I think that's it had to go over in my opinion. So, but I make a strategic choice to focus on the lack of impact with the building, because I feel that puts the burden of proof on those who believe the plane hit the building, which is the official story, and Chandler and Costi. So that's a conscious choice
Can you
to,
explain why that's the case? That it puts the burden of proof on them?
well, because it means they have to prove that the plane hit the building. It's the government and Chandler and Costi. They have to sort of make the case. Why did the plane hit the building? All I have to do in that case is I have to refute that it hit the building. Whereas if I say it flew over, then the burden of proof's on me to prove the flyover. So I like to keep the other side having to prove their case. We do have Roosevelt Roberts, who I'm sure you won't agree with the interpretation of his position, but so I won't. Okay,
We're at 2 minutes.
okay. Can
Okay.
I just throw a question in at the end
Yeah.
here? Just
Let me respond to that last,
okay,
and then you. Okay.
okay.
Okay. So you're correct. If you don't mention the flyover, then the burden of proof, I hope I get this right. The burden of proof is therefore on Sit and you and Xander, and people who advocate for all or most of Sit's position to prove a flyover. Yes, and I think that your arguments are very weak. You mentioned Roosevelt Roberts. As I've told you on the phone, Craig, Roosevelt Roberts, you should never use him. Roosevelt Roberts heard an explosion and went out to the south dock. Or when he was on the south dock, he heard an explosion. And he's very clear. He looked at the clock, and it was either, in his public testimony, it was either 9:10 or 9:11 in the morning. And he consciously thought to himself, oh, it's probably 9/11 because that's the date today. Okay. What is strange about Roosevelt Roberts, that many people don't know, is that Roosevelt Roberts saw a plane, could have been the same one, could have been a different one, we don't know. But there was a plane that was just kind of moseying in the air above the south parking lot of the Pentagon earlier that morning. Okay, and another witness that Sit uses that I don't believe you've said you won't use anymore is none other than Sean Boger, who is the air traffic controller on the roof of the heliport firehouse. And he was very, very clear, even though he admits that he fell down on the floor of the air traffic controller's lookout station when he saw the plane was coming towards him and Alan Wallace. And so he didn't actually see an impact. He didn't actually, any more than Alan Wallace did. And Alan Wallace is clear he didn't. But he was certainly aware of the fireball and the heat and saw the devastation afterwards and explicitly said that the impact or the crash point was at the location of the just recently demolished old firehouse. And he was on top of the new firehouse, a little bit further to the north from that.
Barbara, we're over 2 minutes.
Okay, he's last half of his sentence. He's very clear that a plane was destroyed. It did not fly over. Okay. You shouldn't use him as an overfly witness either.
Well, I don't use him as an overfly witness. He's not an over. He believes the plane hit the building on the second floor. That's what he testified to.
Yeah, but he didn't see it. He's guessing.
Right. That's right. So we just use Sean Boger for the flight path, which is clearly north of Sitco. That's the purpose.
Clearly north, came over the Sheraton, very low, came over the Navy Annex, very low, curved around to where the Arlington Cemetery workers were, and then came to the north of the Cloverleaf and came into where the old firehouse was.
So maybe since I've had my time, I'll wait and come around again. I never did quite get the question in that I wanted to, but I don't mind going back in the queue later. That's not a problem.
Yeah, Jerry is up next. He's on a different zone. So.
Yeah. Hi, Barbara. Thank you for the presentation. Hopefully you can hear me.
No, there's an echo.
I don't know how to fix that.
Back away from the microphone, Jerry.
Can you hear me now?
Well, there's a combination of a fuzzy microphone and your accent.
Sorry. On Craig's point, hopefully you can get the gist of what I'm saying. I think there's a difference between winning a debate and getting to the truth. Those aren't necessarily the same thing. AMEC did the upgrade on the Pentagon. AMEC is the company who did that. They employed a thing called a geotechnical mesh on the outside of the building. And what it was designed to do was anything that impacted the building, it was designed to shred that into little bits and then repel it. And there's a report on a PDF from AMEC.
Oh, that's very important to know. It speaks to the confetti-like pieces.
Yes. So that's kind of what got me to put my hand up.
Oh, good.
So what I'll do is there's a PDF presentation that they made in, I think it was June or August of 2001. And they outlined what upgrades they'd made to the building. They reinforced that front wall on that particular segment. I can't remember, what was it, segment one, whatever one it is.
Yes, you're correct.
Well, they upgraded that. They put in additional steel I-beams, basically, and girders onto the other, to reinforce. The reinforcement, but they also put a spiral kind of reinforcement onto the columns there.
Correct.
I wish we had more structural details on the Pentagon, but I absolutely applaud your presentation. I enjoyed it immensely, and,
Okay,
I hope we can
for
get the
some
videos.
reason I'm getting an echo.
I think that's my point, Barbara. Just to say, I'll get that PDF to you, and I really enjoyed your presentation.
Okay, even though I'm getting an echo, I'm just going to add, yes, I'm fully aware it's in Behind the Smoke Curtain, my documentary, that you have the link to in the email from Sue Serpa, and you will see that it's called a Kevlar mesh, Kevlar. This is in wedge 1, which was the only wedge from the center line to the south of the west side, and then going around to the south side. That is wedge 1. Most people think wedge 1 is the whole west side. No, it was from the south half of the west side, and then around the corner, the right corner, as you're looking at the west side, around the corner to the other side. That's wedge 1, and that's where they had put on the outer walls. This Kevlar mesh was embedded inside the concrete and the bricks.
Yeah, there's like a limestone on the outside, and then there's 8 inches of brick, and I believe the columns were 14-inch square and then 12-inch square further up. I hope we can get more details on it, and I hopefully that the video might be forthcoming, because there are a lot of videos there, as you mentioned.
Yeah, by the way, can somebody help me with my echo? My audio echo?
I think it's when Jerry's not on mute that other speakers echo. Yeah. Something about
it's gone. It's gone.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
So when he's on mute, it's fine. Something about his microphone. Anyway, I don't see any other hands raised. Do we want to circle back to?
Yeah, Craig McKee has a question. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Thanks. I'll give you 2 or 3 things I wondered about, and then you can just sort of hit them as you wish. One
Can
is
you do them one at a time?
Okay, sure, I can do that too. Did I miss? I was trying to understand whether you were saying that there was actually a pole hit at the northern location.
I believe so.
Really?
Absolutely.
Why do we not see any evidence of a missing pole?
Well, you haven't been shown it if it's real, right? Hemphill says that he saw a flash of the wing of the plane, and he was a pretty good witness. And it's a witness that we both use for that reason, because he had like a bird's eye view. He said he saw a flash when the wing of the plane, the outside wing of the plane, I don't know if he said tip, but the wing hit one pole. And by the way, I meant to add to my PowerPoint, that in, I believe it was Chandler's presentation, yes, it was. He gives quite a long video segment of I'm trying to remember who did the video, but anyway, it's a member of his group from the Northern California 9/11 Truth Alliance who did the video, and Ken Jenkins video, and he gave a clip in which he showed the witnesses the analysis by, I believe it was Frank Legg, of the witnesses and how they broke down. And when it came to the light poles, there were a surprisingly low number of individuals who saw or claimed they saw or believed that they saw even one light pole being hit. And he bunched them all together in a category that Frank Legg referred to as one or more light poles. Okay, so yes, I don't know, but that's one of the reasons I want more video. Is yes, I believe that the left wingtip hit a pole further to the north.
Well,
Okay.
I'll just say before I move to the next thing is, Hemphill doesn't say that he saw it hit a pole.
No, he says
He saw a flash
he
that
saw a
he
flash.
interpreted as being the
Correct.
wing hitting a pole. So
That's
it's an
correct.
important distinction because
Well, it is, just a minute, it is and it isn't. He wouldn't have interpreted it that way if the flash hadn't happened at the point where, at least from his perspective, it looked like the plane wing had hit.
he may have thought that's what it represented. It doesn't mean that it did, though.
No, it doesn't mean
Yeah.
that it did, but there was a flash from something.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't go along with the idea that England's cab really was hit by a pole, because I think the lack of interior damage to the cab discounts that completely, personally.
I do
Yeah.
too.
Okay.
No, I was
And
only referring to the location of the cab to begin with.
right. Okay. Now, just one point, and I'll let this go. I see there's more hands, so I'll one of the points that Sean Boger described seeing, what he said, I believe he said it was either an Airbus 320 or a 767 or 737. I forget which of those ones. So he believed it was a very large airliner that came on the North Path. And given how close all the light poles are together around where the helipad was, what I'm wondering is, how can a large plane that's too big to fit between those poles, how could it have the left wing touch the helipad and still get through those poles? Wouldn't it be too high to do that if it flew over the poles?
No, I'm by definition, if my theory is that the flash that Hemphill saw was what he interpreted as being, from his perspective, that it was in fact the left probable wingtip, some part of the plane on the left, hitting the pole, and then it started banking to the right, and then we have all these witnesses that very left wing crashed, and then there was a big fireball.
When my recent comment had nothing to do with the pole. I was now talking about.
I understand. I don't believe Boger is correct at all in his judgment of the size of the plane. I do not.
So you believe it flew between the poles then?
Well,
next to the helipad.
Well, before the helipad. The helipad's beyond the poles.
Yes, but to touch the ground.
The poles are all equidistant apart.
Right.
Yeah. Do you happen to know the distance between the poles? I forget.
I don't know the exact. I would estimate it to be like 30 or 40 feet. There's certainly a photograph I've seen that looks. I mean, that's a guess on my part, but it's a very small part of what a wingspan of a large plane would be.
Yeah, and by the way, Chandler in his presentation does this in this data drift section, right? He claims that the plane that one of his alleged proofs is that the plane, the wingspan of a 757 is, I believe it is 125 feet, and that perfectly matches it's, I am certain that the poles are not 125 feet apart. I'm certain.
Right.
And I've been there, and I did walk them off until a Pentagon goon stopped me and made me go back to the Sheraton Hotel. They are, in fact, equidistant apart along that part of the road. But the other comment I'd make is that Hemphill, unlike Sean Boger's job was to be a helicopter air traffic controller. He was not an expert like Hemphill was on airplanes, on identifying airplanes in the air. And Hemphill said that he believed it was a 737.
Well, I'll just before I just finish here, I'll just throw this comment in too, because you mentioned about Legacy. That Chandler said that Legacy was mistaken. He said more than one thing that he claimed Legacy was mistaken about.
Oh, right.
He also said that he was mistaken about describing seeing the starboard side of the plane.
I know,
which of course would be a north path. So
you
he just,
can't be wrong
any
about
evidence he doesn't like, it's just, oh, they made a mistake.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh,
I mean, it's the ultimate confirmation bias.
Okay.
indeed.
Hamuk is next. Go ahead, Hamuk. You have to unmute yourself. You there?
I'm here.
All
Hey,
right.
look.
Can we see you?
Barbara, nice to see you.
Nice
Great
to
work. Once
nice to
again,
see you
great
too.
work.
I
I
don't
wanted
see you.
to,
I don't see you, Humok.
well, I'm a black box up at the
Oh,
top.
you are in a black box. Okay.
Anyway, delightful presentation, bringing it together and putting your special self into it. And I just wanted to acknowledge our decades together working on 9/11 and
And
all of
being
us.
in Carmel Valley, where I am.
That too, that too. It's a really it's like a part of a home for me.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was a delightful, and I just wanted to say hi and keep it up.
Well, nice to see you again, black box.
And you too.
All right. And finally, we have Mike again. Go ahead, Mike.
Yes, I just want to say, Barbara, I really admire your vigor and your stamina and longevity in this fight. And it's certainly honorable. And it's difficult for me to challenge you because I've always liked you. I've always appreciated you over the years. And I just wanted to say that. But back to April.
We can agree to disagree about minor
That
details.
well, I wouldn't say they're minor, but yeah,
I would.
I agree. Well, I'd
Yeah.
like to talk about April Gallup. Do
Okay,
you
good. I
have?
know her very well.
Yes, I've heard you say that, and that's interesting. It was my understanding that that day, the 11th, wasn't it her second day on the job?
First day. First
First
day.
day. Okay. So she saw the plane parts the month prior.
3 months prior,
3 months. Okay.
approximately.
I thought it said 1 month, but let's say 3 months. Do you have that audio or video clip
Yes,
available to?
it's in my PowerPoint, and I have
Oh,
to do
I
this.
meant tonight. I meant tonight. Is there any way you could play that for us tonight?
Yeah, we could go back and play it here in a minute if you want.
Oh, that I would so appreciate that. Yes,
Yeah,
Now,
very
it's
much.
not, it's
We're not
not,
going to get to our agenda if we go
okay, all
back.
right.
Yeah,
I
and
will,
yeah.
Mike,
Well,
Mike,
yes.
I have those few corrections that I need to make that Craig, I promised to make Craig. I'm going to make those. And then there was a video that didn't quite go long enough, William Middleton. I'm going to put the right one in. And then I'm going to resend the slightly corrected, tweaked PowerPoint to Sue. And then she will send it to everybody, including you. And you will go to that slide and you will be able to hear it.
Okay, very good. Thank you. And just to conclude, again, the shredding of the millions of pieces, this is not natural. This is very unnatural and industrial in nature.
Could be,
Yeah.
could be.
I've not ever seen any photographs of plane wreckage explosions with millions of pieces of confetti-like shredded debris. But anyways, thank you,
Well, that
Barbara.
probably has to be due to the fact that the plane's left wing crashed after having, I believe, hit a light pole to the north. It came in, it crashed on or near the helipad. Big explosion. You've seen that the pieces get larger as they go towards the wall. There is a huge momentum and force of the parts of the plane against the wall. They hit the wall that had this Kevlar mesh. And you heard from Jerry Burns what the Kevlar mesh is designed to do, to shred metal.
And the large pieces that were found and photographed are nice and clean and shiny.
No, they're not. No, they're not.
Okay, I'll have to see those. I've seen other photos you've had and they were nice and clean. But anyways, I look forward to the April Gallup audio. Thank you, Barbara.
You're welcome.
Okay, finally, we have Jack Bottomley. Please keep it very brief, Jack.
Okay, great job, Barbara. Very professional. But I keep thinking when I see a professional production that we need to stop arguing about the details and just get out to the public. I've been shown a lot of evidence that they're kind of working up to another false flag now.
Oh, I agree with you.
And there's a movie coming out. There's a
Yeah,
movie coming out saying we should be.
I'm very, very worried that Israel or the United States or both will pull a false flag on our aircraft carrier and blame
Right.
it on Iran.
They're trying to make it as upsetting as possible. And a lot of people I've talked to have been very impressed with this effort that's been in the Boston Globe and other places, saying that Iran, Russia, and China are such a terrible threat to us. And we need to block off that entire area between Greenland and Sweden so that the Russians and the Chinese can't get through there, which is absurd. But people are buying it. And I think we just need to move on. I agree with Mike that on the shredding, I've seen probably 100 plane crashes because I'm interested in planes, and I've never seen any shredded metal like that. It really dented up like a car wreck.
Have any of those planes rammed into a building with Kevlar mesh?
I can't really. No, I don't know. Yes or no, but
no.
Anyway, it's not worth worrying about. But I just think we need to move on to start getting this stuff out to the public, because we've got a lot of really professional stuff made by Richard and you and a lot of other good people, and we need to get it out to the public, because we're going to be left behind. We're going to be arguing about World War I in the middle of World War II.
And III.
If you know what I mean.
Well, what the Lawyers Committee will do, and Richard Gage, I see Richard there. Good to see you. I didn't know you were on.
Yeah, he's got his hand raised, so we're going to have a third finally.
Okay, that'll be it. That's it. Okay, then we'll go to the agenda. But I will say that the Lawyers Committee, and Richard I are on the board. The Lawyers Committee will be, and as soon as I'm done with this, and we're almost done. Richard, if you can believe it, there are 36 videos from the DC conference, and we're almost done tonight. But anyway, when I'm done with the doing all the edits and corrections on the horrible technical issues with the videos of the recent DC conference, the Turning the Tide conference, then I'm going to 100% focus on the Lawyers Committee's goal. Our new project will be on doing an FOI campaign, and it will be on all aspects of 9/11, on the documents that we do know are still being withheld, that are dispositive, as they say in the law, that any one of them standing alone will prove the official story false. And that's why they're being withheld, of course. So we're going to go for those in a FOIA campaign in the very near future.
Thank you. Okay, Richard, you're up.
Hi, Barb.
Hi.
I missed the first part of the presentation, but I'll watch the recording.
There's a video.
The video, yes. So regarding Kevlar, it's designed to stop high-speed projectiles to the best that it can, not shred them. What Jerry was referring to was something else, another technology altogether.
Oh, what's
which
that?
Is not Kevlar, because he said in the chat that you're talking about something different with Kevlar than he was talking about. And I'm only guessing that he was referring to panels that, when hit with a high-speed projectile, explode outward. They have these outfitted on tanks. I certainly wasn't aware that they had them on the Pentagon. That would be weird, given.
What would be the purpose of that?
Well, so that perhaps a shoulder-held rocket couldn't get through the wall. I don't know.
No, I meant on a tank. Why would they have that on a tank?
Because if a shoulder-fired rocket or something hits the tank is designed to defeat it by exploding outward. It's a panel that explodes outward and stops.
Oh, I understand. Well, if that's okay, I just misunderstood what Jerry was referring to. If he's correct, the Pentagon Building Performance Report refers to Kevlar. Kevlar, like a Kevlar vest,
Yeah,
to prevent precisely such exploding whatever from
penetration. Yeah.
from harming people more than would need be. But I'm going to follow up with Jerry to see what he was referring to if it's not what's being referred to as the Kevlar.
Yeah. And then just a quick request of Mike Zarzano, if you can play tomorrow the video from which your background picture of the pyramidal shaped fire, so we could watch the development of that flame. I've never done that before. That would be helpful, I said tomorrow, Sunday, on the War Room call.
Well, it couldn't be any more, Richard, than the outside security camera video, and it's only 1 frame per second.
But there's
Right.
3 frames on the flame itself. It'd be helpful to see those in context with each other relative to the argument or discussion that we had on the War Room a couple of weeks ago.
Yes, and thank you for raising that. Those were 2 slides that I will now add before I send it to Sue. In David Chandler's presentation at the conference, he claimed that that after the alleged picture of a little part of a plane, allegedly, the very next, that was frame 23. Frame 24 was the first, not yet the fireball, but it looks a lot more like an actual detonation, an explosive detonation. And I've proven that using David Chandler's own photo from his own presentation at DC, which he says, well, we know this is a real detonation explosion. It looks exactly like that very next frame 24. Then the fireball frames that are first very orange red and then more black and such. There could be a number of explanations for those besides a plane explosion. For instance, that could have been when the diesel generator trailer was hit.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you. Next we have Magnus. Go ahead,
All right.
Magnus.
Oh, I thought we were done.
You
I
always think we're
know, but
done. We're never
I
done.
can't deny Magnus. I just
No,
can't. And
Magnus.
also, Al put in the chat, we're going to suggested that we dispense with the agenda for tonight since it's getting so late. So
Could you remind me and everybody, how do we save the chat all at once? Or can you?
you can. There's at the bottom of the chat, there's 3 dots.
At the bottom, I see 3 dots at the top.
Oh, well, maybe on you're using a Mac, right?
Oh, it says save chat.
Yeah. But
Where
I
does it?
will be sending out the chat to everyone anyway.
Oh, good. You mean in your email
Yes.
with the
When I
video?
send
Okay.
out the recording.
Okay. So I should look in my downloads.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. So, Magnus, go ahead.
Okay,
Thank you,
Magnus.
Barbara. Barbara, thank you. I am supporting the Lawyers Committee and Richard Gage and all the projects I'm finding. That is very great. And I just wanted to say that the second floor where the pole, no, the column is still intact down there. Yeah, it doesn't look like a real hit down there from a real plane. And I have a lot of videos in the list I sent in the chat that people were vandalizing and stealing evidence that could have been planted or something else. It's a very interesting thing you have there, Barbara, and thank you for coming here on Boston. And I was wondering, could you please look at the list
I
I
will.
have in the chat?
That's
Thank
why I
you.
was asking for the chat. Yeah.
Thank you. All right. Let me just add myself here, add spotlight. Yeah, thank you everyone for participating in tonight's presentation and the Q&A, and Barbara especially for this incredible PowerPoint presentation. Welcome back anytime. We have a lot of ties here between the
I'll
East
see
and
you on the
West
next
Coast.
board call.
Yes, indeed. So our next meeting will be February 19th when Kevin Barrett joins us again. And until that time, keep working for truth. Thank you.
May I just add to you, Sue, just please wait until tomorrow if you would, if you can wait that long. I'm
Oh, yeah.
very tired and I would
Mhm.
like to make those few corrections and additions to the PowerPoint and send it to you. And then that goes out with the video.
Yeah, it's like watching paint dry and waiting for this video to download anyway.
Oh,
So I
okay.
always wait till the next day.
Okay.
But I will wait for your revised PowerPoint before I send
It
it.
won't be long. I just
Oh,
can't do it tonight. I have to make dinner.
of course, I understand. Thank you.
Hey,
Keith.
Sue.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Sue,
everybody.
this is something that's real important, and unfortunately, Sandra disconnected me. I was going to show you guys real quick, but I'm on my phone. Just somebody had found recently in the Epstein files. I don't know if you guys can see this. I can't connect.
No, I can't.
Um,
Can you screen share? No?
can I? This is really important. I think everybody should know if I can. How do I do this? Can you, uh, you guys, can you spotlight me, Sue? That'll make this easy.
Oh, okay. You're just not going to screen share?
I can't figure it out on my phone right now. I'm all
Okay.
frazzled.
Whoops, I spotlighted the wrong person. Must have slid.
And we can see, it's just that the small text is hard to read.
I can't see it at all, but go ahead.
Well, you hover over Zoom, Barb, and
Ah.
select the screen that has the screen share.
So what we're looking at is two files that were found in the Epstein files that ask about a 9/11 Shadow Commission. And this is a guy named Ed emailing Ghislaine Maxwell saying, any interest in being on the Shadow Commission on 9/11, the membership list is secret. And then there's a link that's redacted, but if you go to the second file, it says here, he gives the link, edwardjepstein.com. So I believe it was sent from Ed Epstein, that would be Jeff's brother, back to it. And he said he doesn't have, thanks for the invite. Unfortunately, I cannot be on the Shadow Commission.
And who
then,
is saying that? Epstein himself?
no, Barb, I don't have time to.
What?
Ed Epstein is probably Jeff's brother.
I got that. Who's saying he can't do it?
Ed Epstein.
Oh, Ed Epstein himself is saying he can't do it.
Okay, so I said one other thing to share. They did unredact the URL in a certain part, and what's so great is you can go back to the Wayback Machine, and the site still exists. And I've been trying to sit there and harvest this site and all the different pages, subsets. I don't know exactly what this is right now, but this is pretty interesting that his brother had some information about a secret
Wow.
9/11 commission. And this email was from 2003.
Well, that's got to be an Israeli connection.
I don't know. I posted it on my Facebook page right now. I'll get more into this and try to follow through. So that's all.
And you'll be going over it on the War Room, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yep.
Wow.
That's all.
Congratulations for the find.
That was Sean Russell. I got to give credit to Sean Russell.
Sean Russell. Wow.
That's pretty cool.
That's pretty big. That's big.
Yeah.
A shadow commission. Shadow commission on 9/11.
Yep.
The perpetrators. The perpetrators commission.
Oh my goodness.
All right.
Wow.
Thanks, Sue.
All right. At this point, we're going to end the recording and keep up the good work, everyone. I'm glad we're in this together.
We're definitely in it.
Yep.
Okay, bye. Bye,
Bye-bye.
everybody.